Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. I'm Beth. Today we're going to talk about my reading for January, including our Shakespeare Code read-along, which was All's Well That Ends Well, and our Syfy Sirens short story, which was The Captive Girl. Most of my reading this month has been done with my ears in the car, because I'm in the car for 2 hours a day. I know, I've hammered it home. I have a long commute right now until I get moved. I think everybody knows that now, but been a good time for me to get some audiobooks in. I'm not really great at it first thing in the morning on my way to work. I tend to default to music then because I'm a horrible morning person and I can't focus on anything. But on my way home, I've been getting in an hour of an audiobook and then normally some before I go to bed as well. So it's really been mostly an audiobook kind of time for me because I don't have a whole lot of other time. I still have some things that I need to come in here and populate for beginning of the year stuff. Because, again, I just haven't had the time, but we're going to go ahead and peek. So here in the front of my reading journal, of course, I have my new Reads rating system. I have put my Reads ratings with their codes in my book pages. So you'll see that when we get there. Again, Captive Girl was our January read. I have decided I'm going to count my Shakespeare reads along with my book counts. I'm not going to put the short stories in there. We're going to go ahead and fill in A for All's Well That Ends Well. Cibola Burn, which I read in the Expanse series. That's also the Expanse. Here we go. Starting to fill out the index. Like I stated, I was going to give each one of my books a number so I could remember what order that I read them in. So there's 1 and there's 4. And then this is the page that they're on. S just means that it's in my Shakespeare journal. So, totally different journal because it's going to transcend many years. All right, past the index, here is what my Goodreads tracker looks like. My goal is 60 books. We are color coding these by genre. Green is science fiction. Purple is fantasy. I went ahead and decided to just make the Shakespeare's classic. I almost added another bubble color for theater or drama, but I decided to just leave it in classic. That's what this teal color is. Obviously, we're too early on in the year for me to fill in a whole lot of this. I could have put in like a Bard adjacent book if I had read one, but I have not. I haven't touched anything on the backlist yet. Don't get excited. I don't think I touched anything on my backlist for 2024 until May, and then I managed to knock out at least 10 of them. I think I got 12 of them. 2 changes. So this was the Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green, which I decided to read in 2024, so then I needed to pick a new book. I've added Rutherford's London in here, big fat book. Y'all, had it for years. And then I covered up Kaikie with the Library of the Dead because I got it for Christmas from my son Kenny. Haven't bought any books yet this year. This is my release radar. I do have some things that I need to transfer from my last reading journal to this one. I haven't had the chance to do that yet. This is my series tracker, so we've added to reading the Expanse series. I'm over the hump. This is the middle book. So I'm on the back half of the Expanse series. I haven't read anything else in Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, but I have read Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. I mentioned in a previous video that I couldn't get over the hurdle of the beginning. I'd started this book at least twice, if not 3 times. And now I have finally finished it. Jokingly created this spread for media related to books. Called it The Dark Side because the book is always better. And we had a huge snowstorm and I was very, very sick. I did rewatch the Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice on the 11th of January. So there you go. We've already added something there. This is for my Bring Your Own Book Club. Again, because of my commute, I'm having a hard time making it to my Bring Your Own Book Club. I'm really sad about that right now. And then Shakespeare Code, January was All's Well That Ends Well. February is Henry IV, Part 1. So Henry IV, Part 1. This is the Hardcore Literature Book Club by Benjamin McAvoy. I have decided I am not going to reread Rebecca. This would work better if I had a marker nearby, but I'm going to go ahead and fill this in with a pen. I just read Rebecca last year. I'm just not going to read it again. I'm just not. I enjoy it. I like it. It was a reread then. I'm also probably not going to reread The Curious Case of Jekyll and Hyde because I just read it last year. So Let's go ahead and fill that in as well. We're just going to count them because they're so close. There's no need for me to reread them again this year. I mentioned when I put this in here that I was not going to do them, probably even chronologically or the month that they were assigned on. It was just a way for me to explore some other classics because I do like to read classics and get those in here. Then the Pop Sugar Challenge. I'm reading the Expanse series, and one of these is about space tourism. And it's really not about space tourism, but there is a quip, a one-liner, so to speak, in book 5, where two people are in a smaller spaceship and they're trying to be incognito. And one of them makes a comment of, "We just look like tourists on our way to Jupiter." And I thought, I could totally just put in Nemesis Games for this spot. I don't know, I might still. But again, it's early on in the year, so we get a lot of time to fill in what I read for the Pop Sugar prompts, or if anything matched. This is my Hall of Fame. This is going to be my top books of the year. And here is January. So reading recap. 4 reads if I count All's Well That Ends Well, which I'm going to. 5 reads if I count Captive Girl, but we're just going to leave the short stories separate. 2,272 pages. Is that right? Cibola Burns, 500. Nemesis Games, 550. Yeah, that's about right. All audiobooks. My average rating is a 4.00. Here is our short story, which I just read at the 31st. I was like, oh my god, I haven't read my short story yet. It is Captive Girl by Jennifer Pelland. 7,111 words. It was written in 2006. I rated it 3.5 stars. Normally I write little blurbs that sound a little more professional and I put up book cards. Guys, I don't have time to do that. We're just going to talk about the books. In Captive Girl, we have a protagonist known as Alice. She lives in a colonized society in another solar system. It's referred to as a separate soul world, a different sun world. At some point in time when she was a child, there was an attack. Her parents were killed. Some of these children, all girls from this attack, volunteered to enter into a program where they would have their senses stripped from them. They were blinded, their tongues were cut out so they couldn't speak. Their hearing was damaged, so they couldn't hear, and it made them more in tune with the instruments and things that were looking for threats to the planet, like an attack. There's also mention in here that, did the attack even take place? Was it actually an asteroid? Was it part of everybody's imagination? Was it not actually ships? But they refer to them as the black ships. These girls did go into this voluntarily. They are now of or in or around the age of 1920, where the story starts. One of the girls has gone mad. One of the girls wants out. She volunteered in, she wants to volunteer out. There's a shift missing at this point. Our character Alice wants to fill in the extra shift because she doesn't want what happened to her parents to happen to anybody else's parents. On top of this, she has a caretaker by the name of Martika, who is a doctor of some sort in regards to science things, but she's also Alice's caretaker. She's the first voice and touch that Alice heard when she came out of the series of surgeries that took away all of her senses. Somewhere along a line has been crossed where Martika has come into a touching sort of relationship with Alice. Alice is now 19. She craves, obviously, the touch of this human, Martika, because it's the only touch she's really ever known. She thinks she loves Martika. There comes a point where they decide it is time to do away with the program because they don't want to take any more small children and blind them, deafen them, take away their senses, and continue this program. Alice wants to keep going because, again, she doesn't want this to ever happen to anyone else. She's not really given a choice. They tell them that they now have instruments that can detect these things, that science has gotten good enough that they no longer need the human involvement. Science is also good enough that they can give them their sight, hearing, voice back, and all of that is done through a series of surgeries. All of it's robotic, essentially. They have a voice box, they can learn to walk again, all of these things. And when she wakes up in the hospital after this surgery, Martika's not there, because the word is used in the short story that she essentially must have had a fetish for the situation that Alice was in. I mean, Alice even wore a mask that was a metal. Her face couldn't be seen. It was cold. Martika doesn't want to have anything to do with her because she no longer is in a wheelchair. She no longer has the metal on her face. She no longer is somebody who needs a caretaker. And Alice essentially sacrifices herself to get that love back and pretends to be those things, even though she's not those things, when Martika comes over for intimate times. I wrote down, can a child who made a sacrifice in the name of duty be strong enough as an adult to not make a sacrifice in the name of love? Then I wrote, at what point did Martika cross the boundaries of a caretaker? We know Alice is now 19. Did it begin when she was a child? And that question is not answered. I think it probably did, based on what I know about child abuse and some of the women who were abused as children, falling for their abusers, and that sort of thing. I feel like that's a question that shouldn't even be a question. I think it's inferred that the sexual relationship between the two had to have started when Alice was younger. Maybe not child, but certainly when she started to become a woman. I did write in here that it was deeply psychological, and the writing is beautiful. It's beautiful writing. I gave it 3.5 stars because I'm so hung up on the morality of it all. Essentially, it does bring forth a lot of questions about humanity and what it means to be human, all of those sorts of things. So there was our first one for the year. Again, all of these short stories that I have picked, I have never read before. If they're absolutely terrible, don't come at me. I was finding ones that were available online. There is a link for this on the original video if you would like to go and read it. So then I came into 2025 reading Cibola Burn. This is the 4th book in the Expanse series. I've had time to put in some of my favorite quotes. I have not had time to put in most of my thoughts. Most of these pages are empty. Maybe on another weekend. Today I've been filming a whole lot of videos, or otherwise I could have been filling these in. But I do have thoughts that I want to put in here. Cibola Burn was not my favorite. It was still good. I gave it 4 stars. It's probably my least favorite of the 5 because I've also read the one after this. And of course I have 4 more to go. It's 581 pages. I did stop putting the name of the book and the author here because it's right here on the printed cover and it was just redundant. Here's my reads rating. Let's pop this out so you can see what that stands for. R is relationships and characters, 1 star, or a full star. Each one of these I can give a 1/4 star, 1/2 star, 3/4 star, or full star, and then do the math. Full star in relationships, it pretty much always is when these books, there is a huge cast of characters in the Expanse books. Engagement and enjoyment, this is where I gave it a 1/2 star just because I didn't really love it as much as I did some of the others. Atmosphere and settings, always a full star. Development and plot, again, was a little slower for me, so I gave it a 1/2 star. Style and structure, I just love the way that this duo writes their books. James S.A. Corey's not a single human, it's 2 people. And I gave it a full star. So that is 4 stars if you add it up. That's how the easy version works. When I'm doing these long series, I think that's the way that I'm going to go. But I could, if I get hung up on one, I'll go a little more in depth. I read it from December 21st to January 6th, so I came into the year reading it. One of the quotes that resonated with me was, "A person can fail the people they love just by being who they are." I'm feeling that very deeply right now. The premise of the Expanse as a whole, we have colonized our own solar system, not even our whole galaxy. We've just moved out from what we know of the planets that are circulating our known sun, which we call Sol, S-O-L. Obviously, we come from Earth. We have fully colonized the moon, which is now referred to as Luna. We have colonized Mars, where generations of humans have been trying to terraform the planet. There are huge colonies on what we call the belt, which is the asteroid belt between Jupiter and Saturn, where a lot of minerals and things are being mined. The people who were born and raised out in the belt in low gravity spaces have different physiology from the humans that were raised on Earth in gravity. There is things that happen in the first book. We're just not even going to go into it. A found family comes together, and that found family is the crew of a ship known as the Rocinante. And in Cibola Burn, there is an attempt to colonize a planet that was not previously known. Of course, there's different factions fighting over who has the right to be on the planet, who has a right to the minerals on the planet. The people who land there have next to nothing, and they find these great mineral deposits. There's always this political push and pull in the Expanse books. There's also something else nefarious going on this planet. The crew of the Rocinante are brought in to have some of those conversations. Things don't go great. That's all I'm going to say. Basically, the planet is out to get them, and things are not going well on the planet. Things are not going well for the ships that are orbiting above the planet. All kinds of things go wrong. But of course, our Rocinante crew make it out. And that's about as far as I can go without giving out a whole lot of spoilers. Then I immediately jumped into Nemesis Games. The only thing that I jotted down here is my favorite so far. So right here in the middle, like it is the middle. It is the 5th book out of 9. It is the middle book. James S.A. Corey decides to take our 4 characters from the Rocinante, and for various reasons he separates them. 3 of them are going to face head on certain things from their past, shall we say. While we have gotten bits and pieces of these characters through the course of these other 4 books, this book digs so deeply into those 3 characters we already know and love, and gives us so much of their history and so much more to know about them in the process of horrific things happening to Earth and the escalation of all of the things that have happened in the previous 4 books. There's a lot of shit going on. In the midst of it, there is this deep character work. They had the patience to wait through 4 other books before they went deep in on these characters, and it's such an amazing place to put it, and I rated it 5 stars. This is my favorite so far. I love the first book for introducing us to this world. I love the other books for everything else that they've brought to the table, but this one brought a whole new level of things in regard to the characters. One of them goes home to Mars to try to repair a relationship with an ex-wife. Does not go well. One of them goes to join the Belters from the and a child that she was forced to leave. That does not go well. One of them goes back to Earth to settle the estate of someone who was essentially a surrogate mother. It does not go well. In fact, there's an attack on Earth while that character is on the ground, a devastating attack on Earth. That character is then left trying to find a way off the planet. A lot doesn't go well, but we learn so much about them through the course of this book. One of the quotes I wrote down was, "The pleasantries were just ritual, but ritual was important." This one is another one that rings so true for me because I love my friends, but we're spread all over the planet. I don't live anywhere near my mother, and I'm an out of sight, out of mind kind of person. This quote says, "It was strange how a person could be so vitally important in your life, and yet you had nothing to say to them when they weren't sharing the same air." Deep. Things change, and they don't change back. It's also important. I have a lot of thoughts that I want to write down about this one. I gave it a 1 star on each one of these because it's such a strong book, especially for the middle of a series. January 6th through 12th were my reading dates. I consciously decided, because I was absorbing so much from this book, that I decided I needed to take a break from The Expanse. And I tried again to read The Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb, because I can't go any further in the realm of Elderlings until I read this book. And I made it. I made it through. It is fantasy. It was written in 1998. It's a chunker. All of them are. It's 888 pages, 880 pages. If I'm going to get to my 60 book count for 2025, I'm going to have to read some shorter books. I read it from the 12th through the 29th, and I finally did it. So in the Ship of Magic, we have live ships. And live ships are ships that were created from a very specific type of wood. They're built by a very particular society. When the third generation of captain from the same family dies on the ship, and they have to die on the ships become sentient. They wake up. They have the memories and knowledge from those previous captains, those generations. In the Ship of Magic, we have this one family whose patriarch is about to pass away. The ship has been handed off to his son-in-law, who is a horrible human and not of blood. Someone of blood is going to have to stay on the ship for the ship to continue sailing because of all of the magic and things that are put into the ship for it to be a live ship. They come into port. The patriarch is brought to the ship. He dies on the ship. His daughter has been raised on this ship and expects that to be her inheritance, and it is taken away from her. It is forced upon her young nephew, who wanted to be a priest, and they strip him away from the priesthood. They've already sent him to train to be a priest, but his father pulls him back, basically to just put his body on the ship because someone of blood has to be on the ship. Since his wife has the bloodline, his children have the bloodline, but he does not have the bloodline. And when I say that Captain Kyle, and I just hate the fact that his name is Kyle because my son's name is Kyle, is a loathsome character. He makes reading this book so difficult. I also did it on the audiobook. I do not love this narrator. She has a habit of dragging out any sounds that end in ER, like her or there, and she goes like there, her. I even sped it up, which I don't normally do, a little bit, like 1.25 speed to try to shorten the hers and the errors and the... It's a weird anomaly that the director let happen, because audiobooks have directors. Like, why didn't they not rein that weirdness in? It's just distracting. I rated it 1 on character work. If you know anything about Robin Hobb, it's deeply character driven. The fact that I hate Captain Kyle as much as I loathe him, tells you that the character work is good, because he is just a horrid human. He's not the only one. There are some really horrid humans in this book. Engagement and enjoyment, I put 0.25. It took me 3 or 4 times to get past the first chapter to finally finish this book. Atmosphere and setting. I love the ocean setting. I love the islands. I like the pirates. It's a thing that I love. The television show Black Sails on Stars. Loved it. I love a whole pirate kind of setting. So 1 there. Development and plot, again, a 0.5 star. And then style and structure. I do like the way that Robin Hobb writes. The book is fine. I think it was just the narrator for the audiobook that was not sticking with me well. So we ended up with 3.75 stars. But in my final ratings, I don't do the quarters. So I got to choose whether I wanted to up it to a 4 star. I could drop it to a 0.5 star. We went with 3.5 stars. I didn't give it the full 4th star when making that decision with that math. So that's where I get to add in some of my gut feeling, is when I have something on the 0.75 or something on the 0.25, I can choose to go up or down depending on how I feel about the book. But I was intrigued enough, and I was lazy enough, because I already have the second one on audiobook, that I just rolled right into it. I took a break to read All's Well That Ends Well, but then I went right back to the middle of the Live Ship Traders. I read this from January 12th through the 29th, and then I had to get in All's Well That Ends Well. We're going to look at it really quickly. Here is my Shakespeare journal, and here is All's Well That Ends Well. I don't think I've read this since my first... Let me move this out of the way. Since my first foray at university, went right into university after high school like most people do, except for the Europeans take a gap year, and that should be law. We should all take a gap year. I didn't have to read it when I returned to university as an adult to try to finish my degree, because I didn't finish my degree. I got, bipolar took over, and I got pregnant and dropped out of school and all of those sorts of things. So, revisiting All Is Well That Ends Well was not a first read for me. It does have 23,000 and change words, and I didn't know how I was going to write. I left them all blank. Look, As You Like It is the next comedy. It's not the next one we're reading, but it's the next comedy. That's what the C stands for. And I wasn't sure how I wanted to do this. So I did put in some sketches from Victorian playbills and things that I just found online and stuck in. Shakespeare wrote this sometime between 1601 and 1605. It was first published in 1623 in the first folio. The first known performance of it was at the Goodman's Fields Theatre in 1741. That tells you how long it sometimes was between the publishing of a play and the performance of a play. In this play, and I just decided to do this act by act and just summarize it. Act 1, Home of the Countess. Bertram, the son, departs his widowed mother's home to go to the French court with his friend Perillus. Left behind is the orphaned Helena, also raised in the home, and she's in love with Bertram. There's probably a little bit of an age gap there, like having fallen in love with the older brother figure kind of situation. Love being the very operative word here, and we'll discuss that in a minute. In Act 2, so Helena's father before he died had been a physician. The Countess allows Helena to follow Bertram to the French court to try and heal the sick king, because nobody else has been able to heal him. She succeeds with whatever knowledge she retained from her father, and he offers her any husband from his court. I wrote, Bertram, who runs away to war to avoid the marriage because he thinks he's too good for her. She's a commoner, and he can't have her, and he won't have her, so he runs away. In Act 3, he writes to Helena and tells her that she must carry both his heirloom ring and his child in order to secure him. But of course, he's not going to sleep with her. She takes it as a challenge and follows him to Florence, where she befriends Diana, the daughter of a kind widow, and the current object of Bertram's desire. Because of course she is. Here I just dropped in a quote, one of the most famous. Love all, trust a few, do wrong to no one. Act 4, it's your climax. Deception. Sleeping with the wrong woman. Rings are gifted. Child conceived. It must have been one hell of a disguise. If you've never read Shakespeare before, particularly some of the comedies, Shakespeare is a really big fan of guise and deception, and it comes into play here, as does what must be some sort of magic, because they arrange for Bertram to come sleep with Diana and take her maidenhead. And of course, Helena takes her place. And somehow, he doesn't know he's sleeping with Helena, because the disguise is that good. And not only do they sleep with one another so that she can conceive said child she needs to conceive per his mandate, they exchange rings. He gives her the heirloom ring that he says in the letter that she cannot have him until she has it. She gives him a ring that the king gifted to her when she saved his life. All the things happen. Act 5 is the big reveal. Bertram is back in France. Helena's thought to be dead. Bertram is set up to marry Lefroux's daughter, but he presents the daughter with Helen's ring, and the king recognizes it as his gift. And he wants to know how Bertram got it. And of course, Helena's alive. Duh, because they're always alive, people. Bertram seduced and abandoned me, she says. Diana appears to tell the tale and set the record straight, because Bertram's like, yeah, well, I slept with someone, but it wasn't her. Then he's got to admit how much of a cad he is if he took somebody else's maidenhood. Diana comes to set the record straight and said, well, he did something wrong, but he didn't take my maidenhood. She tells the truth. And of course, Helena has both the ring and the baby belly, And the king says he will pay her dowry. She can select a husband. And of course, Helena chooses Buckram again, even though he thinks he slept with Diana, who he wanted to sleep with. Suddenly, all's well that ends well. This is one of those plays that irritates me. I love Shakespeare. I even enjoyed the play, don't get me wrong. But this is one of those ones that, on one hand, Helena really pisses me right off because she is obsessed with Buckram. That's the only answer for her to go through what she goes through in order to secure him. The king even says to Buckram, "'Tis only title thou disdainest in her, that which I can build up." And then here I wrote, "Is the nobility noble? Are commoners common?" Because that is part of the commentary of All's Well That Ends Well. Helena is unique amongst Shakespeare's female characters because we get access to her thoughts. Helena does present some of her thoughts in the form of soliloquy, where she's giving a speech all by herself, and we get to hear what she's thinking. Most of Shakespeare's female characters are not given that honor. It is interesting in this particular play that we do get that from Helena. She is very, very confident for a character of this time and place, but she is also very morally gray. There's something about her standing up and saying, "I'm going to go to France because I have the skills to save the king. I can heal him. Nobody else can do it. His current healers can't do it. I have the gifts. I am the one." That is an attitude that one of us today might have. It's not necessarily the attitude that a woman in the 1600s would have had. She does also have that going for her. But then I wrote her, quote, "love of Buckram is more obsession." I mean, girl, let it go. He doesn't want you. She will do everything to have him. And boy, don't we see a lot of that in pop culture. That's all I'm going to say. That little bit drives me nuts. The fact that he even thinks he has slept with Diana. He doesn't think he has slept with Helena. He's thrilled to have slept with Diana. And yet Helena's like, yeah, I still pick him. And all's well that ends well. No. Good times. I guess we can see how this is going to manifest. I'm just going to give myself a little bit of a recap, a few thoughts, maybe some pictures, maybe some quotes. I mentioned in my last plan with me that I would probably have to listen to it while I was in the car. And it makes for a great listen. Most of Shakespeare does. I found a version that had a cast, so that's the version that I listened to. There's a line in there where somebody is speaking about the captain and somebody says, "Was that the captain over there? Blah, 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 blah." And the response is, "Upon my knowledge, he is, and lousy." And that's how it's said. Not lousy, lousy. And I had one of those epiphanies, which happens a lot when I'm reading Shakespeare, where I go, holy shit, the etymology of lousy is louse, which, is a bug, a very irritating bug. And sure enough, I looked it up, and lousy, mid-14th century, from louse, figurative use as a generic adjective of abuse. Lousy, louse. And it came about like many, many words did because of the playwrights. So the word louse didn't have enough beats to make the iambic pentameter sing like Shakespeare can make it sing. Therefore, louse became lousy, or now as we know, lousy. And there's a lot of adjectives. The Y became very popular with the playwrights of this time period in order to make their meter, whatever meter they were working with, and Shakespeare, obviously, it's iambic pentameter, in order to make the meter work. But it's just when the narrators, but that particular character pronounced it with the S instead of the Z sound that we tend to put on it now, lousy versus lousy, my brain went into overdrive and I got stuck on that word, wanting to look up the etymology. So I made a point to put it in here because it was such a little aha moment on such a silly word. But there you go. There's a camera lens into my noggin. You're welcome. So, all's well that ends well. Our next Shakespeare read is Henry IV, Part 1. It is a history. I have a complicated relationship with the histories, and I have to look at it and remember if I've even read Henry IV Part 1. Henry V, yes, and I enjoy Henry V. Antony and Cleopatra, yes. I gotta look and see what my relationship with Henry IV Part 1 is. See if I remember anything from it at all, or if I've ever read it. We'll find out here at the end of February. So on that note, here is February. I have set up for February. Our read for this month is Eros, Philia, and Agape by Rachel Swirsky. I put it on February just because of this title and its relationship to love. Otherwise, I know nothing about it. It is linked down below because, again, all of the science fiction short stories that I have chosen have been published somewhere openly on the web. This one in a sci-fi magazine. It is lengthy for a short story. It's 11,500 words. It was published in 2009. I come into February reading The Mad Ship, which is the second by Robin Hobb. I started it right after I finished All's Well That Ends Well. Here are my spots for my reading recap. How many books did I read, pages, format, and my average reads. Here is where I'll put my thoughts on Eros, Philia, and Agape. This is a beautiful. That is my wrap up for January. The 3 reads, which is pretty good considering I spent all of my time in the car, and they are all, or 4 reads if I count All's Well That Ends Well. A lot of time in the car. Trying to get my reading in as well. That's how January has started. Let me know what you've been reading. If you like this video, you know what to do. Give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you in the next one.